GPS glitch again. Unless this is how the Tesla starts to fly. Oh, now it's finally waking up.
Let's rock and roll, John.
Okay, let's rock and roll. Let's rock and roll with this.
The president stands with the American people on this. He doesn't want to see people like Nancy Pelosi enriching themselves off of public service and ripping off their constituents in the process. I think it's frankly ridiculous that anyone in this room would even suggest that President Trump is doing anything for his own benefit. He left a life of luxury and a life of running a very successful real estate empire for public service, not just once, but twice. And again, the American public reelected him back to this White House because they trust he acts in the best interest of our country and putting the American public first. This is a president who has actually lost money for being president of the United States.
Dear God, I think I've identified Carolyn Leavitt's first lie. She had such a good track record too, but no, that wasn't true. And ridiculous or not, I am going to continue to assert that Donald Trump is massively enriching himself and his family with the presidency. And however much you think he's benefited monetarily, you gotta get that number up. It's higher than you think, because a new analysis says they believe that since 2017, him and his family have been enriched to the tune of $3.4 billion, which is something like twice as much as they were worth before he entered the White House. And so whether you believe his real estate empire was successful or not previously, like Carolyn Leavitt says that she does, nothing he has done, no condo sales, no golf courses, no Trump steaks, no Trump air, any of that can compare to the money that he has earned thanks to the fact that he is the White House. And he's not the only one benefiting. A lot of wealthy people have benefited massively since he became president. We will be diving into that, but let's start off with him. So the first revenue stream, and there are many of these, seemingly a new one every week, comes from Trump's Palm Beach estate, Mar-a-Lago. So in addition to the revenue he generates by holding his own campaign events at the club, which directly benefits him monetarily, he has profited from other candidates, conservative groups, and influence seekers rushing to hold events there too. Again, for pay. He takes the money the donors paid to those other candidates. It goes to Donald Trump. And way more than you might think. The club says that it limits membership to 500 people. Each reportedly pays an annual fee of about $20,000. But after the 2016 election, he began jacking up that initiation fee. In 2016, it was $100,000. Last fall, it was set to rise to $1 million. And it could be $5 million, it could be $20 million, it doesn't matter, because there are definitely 500 people that want proximity to the president and they will pay for it. And unlike a campaign donation, there's no limit on what he can accept. They can just hand $20 million to the president, have his ear, have dinner with him, have big, beautiful pieces of cake, and it's all legal. Need not apply. And that's not it. Okay, that's $125 million he's apparently benefited just through Mar-a-Lago. But there's a lot more than that, and it's escalating, particularly in the area of cryptocurrency. 73% of his net worth apparently now comes from crypto, despite the fact that his family only really got into it like 2 years ago. I mean, he had his trading cards or whatever, but now massively overshadowing real estate or anything like that. He has made over $400 million on token investments. His family has made about $1.3 billion thanks to cryptocurrency so far. And what do you know, by the way? Since he became president, he's passed multiple executive orders further deregulating cryptocurrency. Just last week, he passed an executive order allowing Wall Street's variety of different alternative investment mechanisms, including cryptocurrency, to now have access to 401ks, which not only massively benefits them, but also potentially imperils millions of Americans' retirements. And so he is set to make way more off of that as well. Now, we have a lot more on this, but Nina, we're going to broaden this to how corporations have been benefiting recently, but we're starting with the Trump family because this myth persists that he would never do anything for his own financial advantage, and I find that to be offensive since I'm a fan of reality. What do you think?
I am too, John, and certainly the presidency is the best thing that has ever happened to President Donald J. Trump. It certainly is a one-way ATM, unfortunately, while he is in office. a lot of politicians of that stature certainly have made money or come into it with a lot of money. That's one of the problems with the system, that it does not comport itself to allow working class people to really have an opportunity to run for Congress writ large, the Senate or the House, less known the presidency of the United States of America. His press secretary is delusional, but you know what? TYT family, she's doing her job. Her job is to advocate and to defend the president of the United States of America, just like every other press secretary has. And from time to time, John, they don't suspect that people like us and others will see the cracks in what they are saying. He left a life of luxury. How is that? I mean, he has the plane on America's dime. He lives in public housing on our dime. He benefits from a public health care system, one that he and members of the GOP and also Democrats too are not willing to afford to other Americans in this country. So it is very clear, and that stat, I mean, just staggering, John, $3.4 billion off of being the president of the United States of America and counting. And shame on folks that won't stop the stock buybacks.
Yep.
And that's what is happening in the Congress. Again, Democrats had the opportunity to do it. Former leader Nancy Pelosi stood in the way of it. So for me, John, either one of these parties, and we're highlighting the corrupt nature, that it is legal to bribe politicians in the United States of America. I need the Dragon Squad to wrap their minds around it, understand it, and the fact that this is bigger than President Donald J. Trump. This system existed before him. Hopefully it won't exist after him. But we, the thinking public, and people who care about this level of corruption have got to act to be able to put bumpers along the way to stop this from happening. And campaign finance reform, John, is one of the ways to do it. Although some of the things that you laid out, campaign finance reform will not be able to prevent in the immediate moment the fact that Mar-a-Lago whenever he wants to.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that I've been asking for a long time and I've never gotten an answer. Like, so if you, let's say you run for office and you release an NFT, it's nothing, it's just digital fluff or whatever, and you charge $5 million for it, you could just do that? Like, and some billionaire could like, if that, they wouldn't do that for you.
No, in that case, John,
Okay, let's say some, we track down a left-wing billionaire who gives a damn about the world or whatever. He's like, yeah, no, I want that NFT that she made. I'm gonna give $100 million for that. You can do that, I guess?
Yeah.
Evidently you can. I guess this is a rhetorical question, but evidently you can. And even in that, the bill that you were referring to, that bans individual stock trading, which definitely should be passed, and should have, as you said, been passed under the Democrats. But unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi is only on board when she's in charge of it. It has a carve-out so Donald Trump can continue to maintain individual stock until after he's president anymore. So the corruption, and also the idea that he left a life of luxury. Have you looked at what he's done to the Oval Office? He covered everything in gold. He's building a $200 million ballroom for fancy dancing. He hasn't left anything. He's dragged it along everywhere he's gone. And so the people not sick finally of the corruption, the epic bribery and corruption. And one other thing I worry about, and feel free to chime in on that, but prior to this, the crypto week, we already had a bunch of, especially Democratic primaries, where crypto money would flood in there. Oh, I know you know everything about this. Would flood in there, and now the gloves are off. They can make even more money, and they're definitely going to use it to influence these elections. What race is going to be free of the influence of cryptocurrency from here on out?
None, John, as it seems. And if this, corruption is flowing like milk and honey. It's personally for my race in 2020 and 2021, as you well know, the TYT family knows, the crypto money came in heavy in the Ohio 11th district. And it turns out that my race in 2020 and 2021 was the most expensive congressional race for the Ohio 11th congressional district. These people are buying that. People have to understand these big money interests, they're not doing this for nothing. They're not just doing this for a picture and a smile. They're doing this to be able to purchase influence. The level of influence that the average voter, the average American just does not have. And And so we call this the United States of America. But John, I'm really, it's the corporate states of America. And it's been that way for a long time. But to your point, the bubbling up that is really all up in our face, and nobody can say that they don't see it, because President Donald J. Trump is making sure that we fully understand the situation. The question becomes, when is enough enough, and when will the American people revolt enough in that we don't elect people, we don't even entertain electing anybody that takes this kind of money. And if the Democratic Party was smart, John, if they were smart, because they're real feckless, if they were smart, they would bar dark money, big money, all of that in primaries. It is a corrupting force indeed, and it drowns out. This is the point. It's not just about me. It's about what happened to Congresswoman Cori Bush or Congressman Bowman, people like that, and so many others, John, who don't have a real opportunity. But more important than any of us who've ever run for office, it is about the residents in St. Louis, the residents in a portion of New York, the residents of Greater Cleveland, having their voices and their right to choose, unfettered by other influences, the type of people that they want elected to serve them and not the corporate interest. It's the owner-donors, and they got choke collars on these people.
100%. Yeah, and the collars are going to get even bigger. They're going to be gold-plated. They're still going to be collars. Okay, well, let's move on. You mentioned the corporate states of America. Let's talk about that right now. Nobody was surprised that one of the first things that happened after Donald Trump got in office is they passed this absolutely massive tax cut bill, and individual billionaires made out like bandits, almost literally like bandits, but not just them, corporations too. And corporations are already and will be, as long as Donald Trump is in office, and if another corporate Democrat gets in, likely even then, be flooded with money. And the argument that's made to the American people is, no, that's not corrupt or whatever, it's good, because we give them tons of money, and then they invest it, they hire people, it all trickles down. But does it? I'm going to show you the recent numbers, but I want you to bear in mind, recent numbers or not, what always ends up happening when you shower them with money is they use it to their benefit, not to the benefit of the workers or the American people or the American government or anything like that. And this is just the most recent cycle of that. What they're doing is corporate stock buybacks. It's what they always do when you give them money. And those buybacks are now expected to top $1.1 trillion this year, led by big banks and tech firms. They've already announced just shy of $1 trillion of stock buybacks so far this year. The best start to a year on record, with best having a certain meaning, I suppose. I don't think it's best from my perspective, but it should end up topping $1.1 trillion. And you can see how that has trended over the last 20 years or so. And if you're not a CEO, I assume most of you are. If you're not a CEO, what this basically is they have all this money. They have way too much money to spend on things like new factories, new facilities, which, and this is going to blow the mind of people like Donald Trump, you don't just build because you have the money to build it. You build it if you need to build it. You build those sorts of things. You produce more gadgets and doodads based on demand, not just based on having the cash. You don't do it out of the goodness of your heart. You do it if you need to. And since they don't need to, they find somewhere else to put the money. And so what do? They literally buy their own stock. And you might wonder, if you're one of the vast majority of the American public who doesn't own stock, well, why would they do that? Because if they buy up the stock, there's less stock out there, which means that the individual stock is worth more money. And why would you do that? Well, the board members, including the CEO, all the leadership, they own a ton of the stock. And so it's a way for them to give themselves a massive raise. And even aside from the personal corruption of that, make it look like the corporation is worth way more than it was, even though the fundamentals, supply and demand, all of that, are exactly the same. It's what they do every time they're showered with money, which is effectively every time a new Republican administration comes in and passes a massive tax bill like this, which Trump did, and Trump did last time, and George W. Bush, and on for literally decades. And so that's what they're doing. None of this, by the way, will produce a single additional job. None of this is research and development that lowers the cost of the goods and services that you buy or anything like that. It's not building out the infrastructure of America. It's jacking up artificially the stock price of these corporations. It's what we told you they would do, and it's what they're doing, Nina. What do you think?
Yeah, man, you know, John, as you were talking, I was thinking gluttony, greed. That's really what this is. I mean, how much money is enough? And to live in a society, a hegemonic nation like the United States of America, where so few have so much and so many have little. A society where people can't afford their health care, where people put insulin on credit cards, where food banks. Now, you know, we have a GOP leadership that has cut funding to food banks. They worship at the feet in real time to these corporations, and the system is rigged. I need folks to understand that. But the system is not immutable, meaning the system was created by a group of people, and the system can be recreated by a group of people. Again, the question becomes, when will we, the people, be so fed up that we're not going to take this anymore? These corporations are unpatriotic, and they are showing that they don't care one iota about we the people, about the American people.
I hope that they are enraged, at the very least in time for the Democratic primary, which should, hopefully, I want it to be a royal goddamn rumble. I want it to be a metaphor, blood sport. I want, put whatever centrist Democratic governments you want, or whatever. We got one locally. Send them over there. And then have them face down the best progressives. A whole bunch of them. You know what I want that we've almost never gotten? I want a Democratic primary where I get to be in vicious debates, feuds with other leftists about the best presidential candidate. Not like, oh, we got one and oh, they're going to be shared by Buttigieg or whatever. No, not that. I want to be like, no, I think it should be X or whatever. No, it's actually them. They've got a better housing policy. They're more committed to climate justice. That's what I want, and I hope that we get it. And there's a whole bunch of time leading up to that for us to generate a bunch of great candidates.
You have red flag warnings all across parts of Idaho, into Wyoming, into Utah, down into Colorado too. And again, because of those thunderstorms that could lead to some fires beginning to develop. It's also really hot. It's dry. Temperatures in the 90s to 100s, over 100 for folks down across the southern plains into the Midwest. We're going to see the heat build over the next several days. In the Northeast too, it's going to be a humid one before it gets more comfortable going into tomorrow. But that fire threat out west also very humid, with more threats of thunderstorms producing a flood risk down through, especially this afternoon, into Virginia and North Carolina. That's a look at the weather across the country. Now here's a peek out your window.
Grab the sunglasses this afternoon, as we have plenty of sunshine on tap, along with seasonal conditions and finally some lower humidity. So we'll tap out the low to mid 80s this afternoon. Beautiful day to get outside. Tomorrow will be much of the same, a degree or two warmer, but as we look at your weekend forecast, we'll be back around 90. Heated to seas higher, storm chances late Sunday.
The clock. So, Joe, not everybody is embracing this. This is dividing Democrats in some ways in terms of the response, but also, as you can see, the residents of Washington, D.C. not feeling completely comfortable with this. Some of them.
Well, some people don't like it, and there was, of course, the Subway sandwich assault heard around the world. Someone threw a Subway sandwich at a police officer. A sort of Lexington shot heard around the world, except in sandwich terms. So Susan Page, you've lived in D.C. for a very long time. I know people suggest sometimes I overstate the insecurity that D.C. residents have felt over the past 30, 40 years. It's far different than Manhattan, and now let me just say it again. In Manhattan, most people there feel very comfortable at night walking 30, 40, 50 blocks. That's never really been the case in Washington. That's not to say it's a hellscape, but certainly I would guess there are some Washington residents, and I've talked to some Democrats and members of the press, who are taking a wait-and-see approach. If this is done peacefully, if it's done without more in partnership with the DC police, they'll be fine. If not, of course, they'll be fighting that bill as it goes through Congress. What have you heard?
You know, I think this is one more example of President Trump's skill at taking issue in which there's broad public agreement, like illegal immigration ought to be stopped at the southern border, or the sentiment that men should not participate in women's sports, and now standing against crime. There are very few politicians who want to stand up for crime. So it sets a kind of trap for Democrats, because they can say, if Trump says, I'm going to make the capital city safe, everybody's for that. And if Democrats say, well, look, it's at a 30-year low last year, it's declined even more this year. This is not the national emergency it portrays it as being. It seems as though they are not taking a tough stance on crime. So I think this has been very tricky for Democrats. And as one result, you see some Democrats, including the leadership of the city, protesting that this federalized takeover of law enforcement in Washington is a bad thing and inappropriate and unnecessary. A lot of Democrats are just going to wait and see, because they're concerned about getting kind of caught in a political trap that the president has set for them.
Yeah, and it does seem, John Lemire, that D.C., even though the president was talking about other cities, D.C. is a one-off. D.C. is obviously the nation's capital, and Congress certainly has a say over what happens there, as does the president in consultation with Congress. But, you know, this is something I will say that Democrats and Republicans have been asking for 30, 35 years about, you know, the nation's capital, why Congress doesn't take a more active role in especially safety and security issues, but in this case, of course, getting the funds to D.C. that D.C. needs. Of course, it was slashed this past year, so they need to get the funds there. But I want to circle back to what Susan said, and that is, this seems like a trap set up for Democrats. Again, I know there are other people watching the show that don't live in D.C. and don't hear from me. I'm telling you, I have received a lot of texts from Democrats that worked on Democratic campaigns who have never voted for a Republican before, that says if he doesn't overreach, a big if, but if he doesn't overreach, if he does this in partnership with the D.C. police force, then they will see that as a positive thing.
Yeah, I think it's a really split verdict here. As Susan and others have said, there's some who think this is good. Others say, you know, it's worrisome. They don't want to see President Trump, meddle with local affairs there in Washington. You're right to say that D.C. is a little different. It is the nation's capital. Also, because it's the federal city, the president and Congress have a lot more authority there than they would somewhere else. But you're right to suggest this could be a trap. It's akin to, of course, what we saw in Los Angeles a few months ago when the National Guard was deployed there. The National Guard basically just stood around for a couple of weeks, didn't really do anything, but it angered a lot of local residents. It angered the city's mayor, the state's governor, saying, look, this is unnecessary. This is a dangerous overreach. So Dave Weigel, let's talk about that for a moment. And Joe is right to underscore that Republicans in Congress cut $1 billion or so of funding that could have gone to the district, that could have been used for all sorts of things to improve quality of life, including public safety. But if the president yesterday, it was striking to have him sort of brashly say, look, we're going to go New York, Chicago, LA, list the cities. That, I think, is something Democrats who might be leery of making too big of an issue with D.C. because of all the reasons we've discussed. But if he does try to push this somewhere else, then that, I think, turns this into a political opportunity for them.
It could, and this happened in the first Trump administration. The FBI was plussing up law enforcement operations in big cities. The difference at that time was a mass protest movement that would meet these extensions of force in those cities and a political backlash to Trump. And he's a very canny understanding of how things have changed, especially in D.C. So Mayor Bowser has been clashing for years with a more progressive council that has conferences, community meeting, that yes, the city.
People, not room. So turn them off before you head out.
Keep your cool this summer with Next Weather.
I'm Ahmed Bazzi. Thanks for watching Next Weather on CBS News Detroit.
Hi, I'm Brian.
Only at Fountain Chevrolet, Michigan's #1 Chevy dealer. Upgrade your space for less at ABC Warehouse. ABC has the best prices.
so help us God, and who are not controlled by owner-donors to be rocking it. So John, your vision about progressive arguing over, I see your progressive and I rage, that's what I want to see as well. And so I'm really happy to see Congressman O'Connor, a dear friend of mine. As a matter of fact, John, as you know, we're going to be rolling through the ATL. On Monday, we're doing a town hall in the evening. Just ask the audience to check out our social media. I don't have the exact location right now. We're really talking about the needs of the people in this country and how we can turn this thing around. Certainly, Congressman and I don't believe we have all the answers, but we have some of them. And we need fighters, not just us to be the fighters, but the everyday people out there to be in this fight with us. That's how we're going to change this country.
I'd love that. Wish I was closer to Atlanta. If you swing by LA, please let me know. I would like to go. That sounds awesome. Yeah, and let me just, you were 100% right. You can't wait until like the beginning of 2027 and all of a sudden pop up with like, you know, a cool logo or whatever.
That's right.
We need you now. You gotta be doing some stuff, okay? You know, go around, talk to people, stand up to the militarization of some of these cities, you know. If like, you know, if you're California's governor, start a podcast, bring on Steve Bannon, do something that shows that you understand the moment we're in, okay? That you're a fighter for us. Talk to Charlie Kirk on your podcast. Something real, you know? Gavin Newsom.
Homeless and campus, why don't you?
Exactly. Yeah, do something like that the base is asking for, you know?